Here's the little secret. Mastering doesn't have to be as complicated as you may think. People hear the word mastering and they freak out because it sounds really complex. It doesn't have to be that way. Mastering is simply taking your final mix of your song that should already be kind of epic and adding those final little touches to make it what is often called radio ready. So in this video, we're going to explore 4 different ways to master your songs on an iPad or an iPhone, although some of these apps are iPad only. So we're going to dive into that. We're looking at GarageBand, how to do it for free. That'll be first cab off the rank. We're then going to look at Grand Finale, an app called AudioMaster Pro, and finally, Final Touch. Now, there are videos and links down in the description. So if you want to jump straight into one of those videos and just get the details on that method, then you can do that. You can also review those afterwards because we're going to move pretty quickly. We're not going to go into every little facet of every app because we've only got less than an hour to go through all of this here today. So we are going to go into a little bit of depth and explain a little bit as we go. But if you want a more quick fire solution and you just want to get in and get done, check out the videos linked down in the description. I've also got links to where you can download all of the apps that we'll be talking about here today. If it's your first time here on the channel, my name is Pete. This is Studio Live today. My goal here is to help you create, record, and release your best music. And we do that through tutorials, through tips, tricks, and live videos just like this one. If that's your bag and you also want to drink coffee like I do, consider subscribing. Welcome to the folks we have here live. I see Stu, I see Tom, Michael, Dr. Zorders. Okay, I've got to do it. Dr. Zorders, Lady Rodaline, Mark's here, Alex is here. We've got a bunch of folks. I will come back because here's the format. We're going to go through, we're going to look at these 4 different ways to master and get through these. I've then got a few tips, so some more generalized tips for mastering, and then we're going to do a Q&A at the end. So pretty standard formula. Let's dive in and get cracking, shall we? So we'll bring up my screen here so you can see my iPad. Now, what I'm going to use is my iPad Pro to do all of the demonstrating here. Some of these, I'll let you know as we go along, which will also work on iPhone, because some will and some won't. And yeah, if you can use these tips as well on any sort of mastering, because some of the things we talk about in mastering are going to be universal across anything that you may be using. But let's get started here. So I'm going to use my song called Murdering Time, or Murdering Time. You can see here I've got the master that I did here that I've actually released. I did that yesterday here on the show. We released it using DistroKid, but I've got my final mix here. So if we tap on this one and give it a play, you'll hear, there it is. So there's my final mix. Let's just give it a little more volume. Gonna have to balance out. Only senses the darkness. Gonna have to balance out so that my voice is not too high above the music. So there it is. Now, I'm not going into detail about how to create the final mix. I've got a heap more videos here on the channel about mixing. So if you want to learn about how to mix and then how to export your final mix from GarageBand, I happen to use GarageBand on the Mac to do this one, but the same principles are on GarageBand on iOS. And if you search my name, Pete Johns Share, you'll find a bunch of videos about how to finish and share your project. But let's assume that you have a final WAV file, a final uncompressed WAV file of your song as I do here. How can we actually master this? How do we actually go and do some mastering with this? So the first thing I'm going to do is use GarageBand. And this one you'll want to check out because this is going to be free. $0, £0, 0 pence. We're going to jump over here into GarageBand. That's not the one I wanted. So all we need to do here in GarageBand is actually, I'll come back here to my in progress folder and we'll create a new song. So we'll tap on create song here. We'll go to audio recorder because that's all that we want here. Tap on audio recorder. Yes, I'm monitoring through my mixer here. So that's all good. Thank you, GarageBand. And what I want to do is make sure that we're using a clean track. So it's already defaulted to this, but if it doesn't, make sure that you've got fun and clean. This just means there's going to be 0 processing whatsoever on this track. And what I tend to do as well is come in here to the mixer icon, go to plugins and EQ and just turn off this effect EQ. Now I know that nothing is affecting this track. If we go back to track view here, there you go, absolutely nothing, no problems whatsoever. The next thing we need to do is create enough space in this track to bring in our WAV files. So I'm going to hit the plus button here in the top right, and I'm just going to stretch this out to, let's just give it a few hundred bars. We won't need this much space. We can adjust it afterwards, but there you go. That's going to give us plenty of space to bring our song in. Otherwise, it'll only bring in the first 8 bars worth, which is not going to be any fun. So now what we can do is we can import our song. So we're going to grab our final WAV file, and again, doesn't matter if you've used GarageBand or anything else to create that final WAV file, you can bring it here into GarageBand now. So we're going to tap on the loop icon, and we're going to go to Files. Now we need to browse from the Files app to actually find the right song. So I happen to have stored it here in my iCloud Drive under my Studio Live Today folder, and under Murdering Time. There it is, Murdering Time Final Mix. We're going to tap on that one. It's going to drop it here into my folder. There we go. So it does that little flash thing, which means it's there. Now we just got to find it because I haven't cleaned up this folder in a while. There it is. We'll tap it, we will drag it, and we'll pop it on this track. Now you can also just pop it on a second track. If you're not convinced that you've made a completely blank track, you can pop it on a second track, and then that one will be pretty blank again. Just remove that effect EQ, and then you can delete this first one. So you can see here I've got way too much space here in terms of how many bars we've got. And the other thing is I don't have this in the right tempo. So you don't have to though, because remember, we're not going to be doing anything related to the tempo or the time signature or any of that. So you could dial those in to match your project if you really wanted to, if you're concerned by things like that, but turn the metronome off, we won't notice the difference. So let's just make sure that this is, say, 74 bars, because that's how far it's going to go based on this. So just so that we've got it nice and neatly in there, we'll bring it back to 74, if we can do that. Come on, I've got to use my finger. It's a little bit hard. Oh. A little bit fiddly here. Just got to drag down. You know what, that'll do. 83, fine. So here we go. Now we can hit play. And there's my track. And it's ready to go. So what we can do, let's bring out our volume dial here. Now this is going to be at unity gain here. And if we double tap that, Jalen's got a good point here, which is that you can also, if you don't want to mess around with the number of bars and you want it to automatically, you can actually set your settings to make it automatic all the time. So yeah, if you put your song length to automatic, it means if you bring in a beat or you bring in a song, it will automatically stretch out your bars. Very good point. I should have mentioned that. So thank you. This is why I have you here live to help me. So we've got our song there. We're ready to go. So now, and you're probably ahead of me on this, we've got this one stereo track, but we can now use whatever plugins and EQ we want to master this song right here in GarageBand. So there's a couple that I recommend that you check out, and that's what we'll show you here to start with. So the first thing though to keep in mind is mastering needs a bit of headroom. So what you'll notice over here, because I created this in GarageBand, we've got some parts here that are actually going right up to 0 dB. So what you can do, and what I recommend you do first, is turn down the input gain here, or it's actually the output, but this is how much is going to come out. So this is going to turn down everything. If you have this up here, or if you turn it up, then what that can do is give you too much gain, and there's not going to be enough headroom for mastering. Now, mastering aficionados and purists will say, that's a hack, that's a bad way to do it. You need to export it using software that gives you that headroom automatically. I agree, but it's not possible, especially in GarageBand iOS. So sometimes just turning this volume down a little bit and then adding some volume in here through compression and through limiting is something that we can do. So I'll put that back to unity gain there. So what we can do, we'll turn it down a little bit. The main thing with mastering is to bring your level up, to give your song enough level to make it radio ready. The thing is, if we go, what I'll do is I'll show you this song in an app called AudioShare. Now, I don't have this link down in the description because it's not actually something I use for mastering, but it is a handy app to visualize your songs, and it's a handy app to move around and trim your songs, which I'll show you afterwards when we do the mastering. So here we go. This is the actual version that we're looking at here, and this is what I mean by those peaks getting right up to 0 dB. You can see there, and you can see there that they're getting right up to 0. Now, the reason that this is going to be okay to master is, look, we've got all of this headroom for most of the song. So if you're using my method, which is just turn it down about 4 or 5 dB on your gain, but then adding in your compression and your limiting, what you're going to see afterwards, once we've done this, just keep this in mind. When we bring it back into AudioShare, you'll see a very different waveform. And that's the thing. Mastering shouldn't be about your eyes, it should be about your ears, but it's a good way to just know what you're doing and what impact you're having on your audio. So keep that one in mind as we come back over to GarageBand. So if you are in love with your final mix and you only want to do one thing, you just want to bring that level up, all you really need to do is use a limiter. Now, thankfully, GarageBand kinda has a built-in limiter here. So if we go here and hit plus, and we go to audio unit extensions, and we scroll down to the bottom, we have these ones here. So these are, there's 12 of them, or are there 15? I never remember. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There must be 15. 15 of these. And these are sort of the built-in audio unit plugins and effects that you get in iOS. Now, they're not going to be enabled by default, so I'm going to quickly show you how to enable them if you haven't already. What we'll do is I'll take you off the screen here because I have to jump over to my settings app. So we're going to go to the default settings app here in iOS, and I'll just make sure there's nothing on that screen that I can't show you that's got my, my username or password or anything like that. No, we're good. So I'll bring us back on over here. So if we come to this and we tap on GarageBand, what you'll notice is as we scroll down here, there is an option here called Enable iOS Effect Plugins. So if you turn that one on, if you don't have these plugins, close GarageBand, turn that on, and then when you reopen GarageBand, you should magically see all of these little orange icons appear, and you'll have all of these plugins. So here's the very, very super duper simple way to master here in GarageBand. That is, we're going to grab this one, the AU Peak Limiter, and then we're going to tap on this. And then we're going to leave the attack and release the same. You can change those around. So in fact, generally, you'd want a little bit of a slower attack time and a slightly faster release time for mastering. Because what this is going to say is, this is the limiting. This is where it's going to compress it when it hits a certain level. But that with a slower attack time, it means it's not going to do it every single time straight away. And with a faster release time, it means it's going to let go of that compression when it gets to that peak. So now all we need to do is drive up this gain to a level where our song sounds good. Sounds simple is simple. So let's come into the middle of the song here. We'll hit play and we'll dial it up. At the end of my tether. And now metering here in GarageBand is, let's be honest, kind of shite. But you can see there, the difference between what we were showing before is where it was sitting down and it was only hitting those peaks occasionally. What we've done now, by turning it up here with our limiter, is it's pushing it right up to that 0 dB more often. But the beauty of a limiter is by its very nature, it is limiting. It is not going to over-compress, it's not going over 0 dB, so you shouldn't get any clipping. You can, and that's what I'm going to show you now. So if we go nuts with this, listen to the effect we get. I just want to show you and so you can hear what happens when you go too hard with a limiter in any sort of mastering. Let's hit play. Only one thing to do. Hopefully you can hear that sounds atrocious. You're hearing pumping. Now, pumping is not your friend unless you're going for a wob, wob, wob effect. You don't want pumping in your mastering. You want to make sure that you're hitting those peaks, but the pumping is actually coming because the limiter is constantly bouncing. So think about it in this, that it's like it's hitting the wall, because it's called a brick wall limiter, yeah? It's hitting the wall and it's bouncing back. So it's constantly trying to turn it down and trying to keep the volume under 0 dB. That sounds really horrible. So again, I'll just play it again. Now that you know what you're listening for, listen to this pumping. Murdering time. Sounds horrible. So as soon as you hear any of that wavering or pumping, you know you've gone too far with your limiting. So let's drop it right back. We'll drop it back to 0, and then we'll slowly bring it up, and we'll just find that sweet spot, yeah? To save myself and others from the thoughts in my mind. I'm murdering time, so I don't end up. So to my ears, around about 5.5 dB is about what we're doing. And that's, again, it's very rough measurements here in GarageBand. And you'll see when we use some other apps, some paid apps, that it's a lot easier to do this stuff. But again, free. And if you like your final mix already, then why not? So there you go. We've done all of that. Let's export this just so that you can see what the waveform looks like. Again, I know, let's not use our eyes, let's use our ears, but just so that we can see what this does. So we'll save out by tapping in the top left here. We'll grab this one and we'll rename it so I know what the heckerin is going on here. There we go. MT master. Right. And then we will grab this and we'll export it. So we'll select, we'll tap it, we'll share it in the bottom left here. We'll share it as a song. We want uncompressed, 44.1 kilohertz, 24-bit. Keep everything as good quality as you can. You don't want to compress anything at all. You want to upload. When you get to your final master, it should be an uncompressed WAV file. Any M4A, MP3, not going to be what you want. We'll hit the share button. Now we're going to actually share this. We'll open it in because we want to open it back over into Audio Share. Just one moment. So that is done. We're going to grab Audio Share, and this will just bring it straight over to here. There you go. This gives you a really good comparison between the original and this version. So there's our original mix. That's our final mix. This is our master. So what you can see there is it is now hitting up around that 0 dB mark a lot more. And this is probably about right. What you can do, and maybe I'll show you a demo as we go through, if you really crush it, it's going to sit right up here. It's going to be what I like to call a sausage waveform, where it's just solid. You listen to Metallica, you listen to Foo Fighters, they got some sausages in their masters. So you just see it starts and it stays at 0 dB the whole way through. For a song like this, you don't want that. So let's take a listen to this here in Audio Share. So sounding good. Now let's go to these loudest parts. What I'll always do with a master is find the bits where it's the big blocks and listen to those, just to make sure that we're not getting any distortion or any pumping in our sound. For I can't trust myself at all. These thoughts in my head. So it's sounding pretty good to me. What do you reckon? Now if we compare that to our original, this is that same section in our original song. Our master. Cool, yeah. Now, you're probably thinking at this point, Pete, all you did was increase the volume. Of course, it's going to sound better. It's at a higher volume. But remember, we didn't just pump up the volume. If we took this file and turned the volume up, all of these bits where it's already close would be peaking. What a limiter does that's different is it squashes down the tops, it pushes down the top, and brings all of the rest of the volume up. So you're not just turning up the volume. If you just turn up the volume without using a limiter, it's going to clip, it's going to distort, it's going to sound absolutely awful. So that's the thing to keep in mind. Now, we won't go into details here, but the other thing that you can do is you can use anything else. So other common things that you may want to use, common plugins for mastering. You may want to use the standard compressor. So you may find you need a little more compression on here. So you may want to come in here and add in your compressor. And I show you how to use a compressor on your tracks in other videos. And the same exact concept is here in mastering. You just want to compress it, be light, be gentle. That's the key thing with mastering. Do no harm. Be gentle and make small, subtle changes. The other things you may want to do, you can use any sort of reverb or chorus plugin. I tend to use those on my final mix. I don't tend to use those on a final master, but you can experiment. Like spend some time experimenting and throw them on. Like if we decided we didn't have enough reverb on this track and we wanted to throw a reverb on the whole track, I mean, at its default, it's probably going to sound terrible. Does sound terrible, but hey, maybe you decide that if you just put 4% on there, you might find it actually glues your mix together. Creating a little bit of reverb across your entire track could actually help. And the other thing, of course, is EQ. So you can just use the standard visual EQ here. So if you find that you're a little bit bass heavy and you just want to drag that off, or you want to give it a little bit more air in your mix, you can just EQ it. So you've got plenty of options there. And of course, you can actually use third-party plugins too. So audio unit extensions, some that I like to use for masterings are things like the FAC Maxima is great for your master. If you want to dirty it up a little bit, a free plugin that's kind of cool is the Rough Rider 3, my favorite compressor from Audio Damage. And what was the last one? A Wider. So if you want a bit more stereo width, we can just add the wider plugin to our entire mix, and we can actually stretch our entire mix out, or our entire master out, like we would have done using this on a track. So let's just take a listen. Muttering time, muttering time. And again, less is more, right? Subtle is better. Don't send it out here. Leave it around there. And just try a few things first, because what I tend to find is the more I do, then I go back to my original song and I'm like, yeah, I've breached the golden rule here. I have done some harm. It actually sounds worse now than it did when I started. And you don't want that. You want to enhance your final mix. Just make sure it's snappy, it's got enough volume, it's got enough gain, it's radio ready. So there you go. Everything you wanted to know about mastering for free using GarageBand. And as you can see, you can even use some of those cool free plugins like Wider, like Rough Rider, again with EQ. You can also use something like LRC5. That's what I tend to use more so for EQ. This one here. So this way you've got a full parametric EQ here. You can dial in some finite, very careful changes here and find those frequencies that you want to change. So there you go. If you want to spend nothing, that's what you can do. And it's a viable way. I've done this on a bunch. So on my EP that I did called Maybe, I did all of my mastering right here in GarageBand. So I didn't even use any other app. And it came out fine. I think it sounds pretty cool. So there you go. There is GarageBand. But we have more options, yeah? So let's come back to our file. And where are we? Here. Let's talk about some apps that you can use to actually get this done. So the first app that we're going to look at here is Grand Finale. Now this is an app from GarageBand. It is currently $14.99 US in the App Store. So you are going to be paying a little bit, but it's a one-time purchase and then you can use it for as long as you like. So we'll come in here. We will search out Grand Finale. And now Pete has to remember how to use it because I haven't used this in quite a while. So Grand Finale by GarageBand, you can see you've got your interface here, you've got input and output gain, so that's very similar to what we were just doing manually there in GarageBand. We've then got a compressor, we've got a multi-band compressor. So this is cool because we're getting into the level now where if you want to compress, you're not just compressing on everything. You can compress your lows, your low mids, your high mids, and your high frequencies differently so that you can get a different kind of sound. We've got a stereo tool, so you've got a built-in stereo width tool that we like what we were using just then in GarageBand, and you've got an equalizer here as well. So what I'm going to do, let's import our track. So we'll tap the import button there. We're going to use audio share import. Now, you can use other methods to do this. In fact, in case you don't have audio share, let's show you how we can do this directly from our Files app. So if we come here to Files, what we can do is select, and then we can tap on this final mix and we can share it. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to share this over to Grand Finale directly. Now, if it's not here in your list of apps, you tap on the More button here, and we can scroll on down. I really hope this works because I haven't tried it for a while. There it is, Grand Finale. So we're going to share this file directly out to Grand Finale. We'll tap on that one and boom, it opens up Grand Finale. It pops in our track and if we hit play, there it is. And you can instantly see that we've got much better metering in here, yeah? You've got your peak metering and you've got your maximum metering up the top there. So you can actually see a lot more clearly what you're actually doing here with your mastering. So what we can do, now like most mastering or like most apps, we've got a bunch of presets that we can actually try first. So that's what I would tend to start with any software, because the presets will help you learn what all the things do, right? So if we go to presets, we can come in here to master, and we can just go with a gentle master. So let's tap on this one, a gentle master to start with. So what this has done is it's not given us a whole bunch in the way of EQ. It's given us a bit of compression and gain. In fact, for a gentle master, this has actually gone pretty heavy, hasn't it? Now, in terms of the interface here, what you can do is each component, each module is separate. So we can turn them on and off using the power buttons here. And that way you can actually hear what is being changed by each of these. But if we, and you can then do your entire one there. So if we hit play on this, there's our unmastered, and there's our mastered. So right away I'm thinking that's too much, like it's too full on. And I do tend to find this with GarageBand's presets is that they do, even the one called gentle there is a bit much. Why don't we go with something like acoustic? So if we tap on the acoustic there and we hit play, time is behind me. See, that's more gentle. That's done a little bit less in terms of compression. Let's continue and find another one. What's something that we want? some live polish. What's that going to give us? Yeah, so this one's giving us, again, a little bit less in, especially in the high end, and a little bit less in terms of the EQ. So we play this one. Don't have nothing to gain. Now, again, we don't have time to go into each and every one of these, but you can start adjusting these and reducing the amount that you have across each of these. So if you do want to start using them, you can do that. You can also just use a little mini preset on these. So you can just go gentle or hard, and that's going to actually change the type of compression that you're getting on there. So there's different options that you have in here, and there's a heap to experiment and play with. With your multi-band compressor, you can say tighten the bass, or medium squeeze, heavy squeeze, extreme, vocal enhancer, and that's again going to change the type of compression. Then you can dial in how much you have on each of these. Stereo tool, same thing. You want to center your bass, you want to widen the top, you want to widen it all. I'm going in and just doing something really strange here. Let's go with some ambient EQ. We'll come in here. We'll give some sparkle. This is going to make it an absolute dog's breakfast here. And we'll go with a slow compressor here on the additive. So let's just see what we've done. What have you done? At the end of my tether. Actually, doesn't sound that bad. Only one thing to do. A murdering time. And the key things to remember here are your input. So your input gain there, you may want to, again, like we did before, turn that down and maybe turn your output gain up. Or you can use this one over here, this makeup gain. If you find that you've done all this processing and then it's still too low, you can use this makeup gain. So let's just play around with that. Murdering time to save myself and others from the thoughts in my mind. A murdering time. All right, despite all of my randomness, it's come out actually okay. So we'll go with it. So let's hit the export button now, and we'll send it back onto Audio Share. So export, we need to change this. Let's go MT Master GF. So it's that grand finale master. Again, Wave 24-bit is what you want all the time. For some reason, be careful with GarageBand. They put their save on the left and their cancel on the right. Every other app in the history of the world has cancel here and save here. GarageBand are just different. I don't know why. So let's hit save on that one. It's going to render out our audio while I have a cough and a coffee. And then we'll return and wait. So while that is processing, yeah, hopefully you're getting some value out of this one. If so, you feel free to hit the like button. There's no carrot button, so you're going to have to hit a thumbs up button if you're getting some value, if you're learning a few things. I know many folks who are familiar to this channel have seen my mastering videos before. You're probably familiar with some of the mastering concepts, but it is something that, again, it gets a lot of mystery put around it. And look, there's a lot you can do with mastering, and a professional mastering engineer using a bunch of outboard gear and, you know, with a pristine listening environment on speakers with sound treatment and all the rest of it is going to be able to do a fabulous job on your mastering. But if you're just creating, recording and releasing in the home studio, don't be afraid to just get in there and get your hands dirty and learn. Even if you don't get the best results to start with, you're going to learn so much that's going to help you in the long run that it's going to be absolutely worth experimenting with. So let's tap Audio Share on this one. It's going to export it out to Audio Share, and there it is. So there's our, if we compare these, there was our GarageBand master. And here's what Grand Finale's done. So you can see it looks quite different, and it's going to sound quite different too if we play it here. And clearly I just went in just whacking on parameters. I didn't play with much. Here it is compared to the GarageBand version. So that extra multi-band compression and the extra processing we did just gave it a little bit more sparkle and a little bit more high end. Myself and others from the thoughts in my mind. So can you hear the hi-hats, and you can hear like Jade's drums are sort of kicking in there. You can hear the snares. There's a lot more clarity there, which may be what you're going for. But if it's not, go back, adjust your multi-band compressor. Again, if we come back and look at this, we had... Oh, go away. There we go. We had here the high mids is where they're all coming through. So if we didn't want all of those high mids, we could just drop this multi-band compressor down there if we wanted that darker sound. So you've got options here. And again, for about $15, this is worthwhile. And you saw there that you could start with the presets. There's some good presets in there and then tweak them from there. And it kind of holds your hand a little bit as you go through. So grand finale. And again, if you want the full explanation of all of these, jump down in the description after this video. There is a link to where you can buy the app, and there's a link to where you can also see a video, my complete video tutorial about it. Let's move on to our next contender. Could have been a contender. Could have been almost anyone. All right, let's grab it. Again, we've got the final mix here. Now we're going to this time go out to another app. I'll show you the app and then we'll just export straight to it, shall we? Let's cut to the chase. AudioMaster Pro. Let's tap select. We'll go Murdering Time Final Mix. This one's going to be quicker because we don't get a lot of options with AudioMaster Pro. Let's hit the share button there. And once again, we will come to open. What are we doing? We want to send it directly to... Now it's not in there. We'll go more. We want to send it directly to something. What am I saying? AudioMaster Pro. Did I go past it? There it is. For some reason, not in alphabetical order. Go figure. So AudioMaster Pro. Now, AudioMaster Pro, there's two versions. There's a subscription model that I think is about $3 a month. The reason I think is that I don't know. I don't like subscription models for software particularly, and especially since it's only, I think, $15 or $20, depending when you're buying it, to actually buy it outright. I wouldn't go renting it for $3 a month. If you like it, you'll start using it all the time on video, on audio, on music, on everything. So let's tap AudioMaster Pro. It's going to open up, and this is it. This is AudioMaster Pro. Now, don't get overwhelmed by all these dials. They do nothing. The goggles do nothing. The dials do nothing. All we've got with AudioMaster Pro, and I say all we've got, a lot of folks will actually really like this, is you've got a bunch of presets. So if you like your presets, you're going to love AudioMaster Pro. You can see here as we go across, we've got Latin, we've got New Age, we've got Pop, we've got R&B and Soul. So you can actually come in here and dial in the different settings that you want here. Thank you, Tempo Bob, for the super chat, by the way. I know I don't like to interrupt, but if someone's going to donate to the channel, then I'm going to give you a shout out. So thank you very much, Tempo Bob. Appreciate you. Thank you for being here. So let's grab the Pop to start with. Now you'll notice here that we've got 3 different types of presets. You've got number 1, 2, and 3. This is basically gentle, medium, and heavy, or light, moderate, and hard. So if we go with the gentle one here, this is going to just give us a little bit of gentle mastering. So if we come to the middle of our track here, we'll just drag this across and hit play. Murdering time to save myself another. So that's our gentle one, right? And this is your gain control. So this is how much you want to sort of push it. And I tend to find that AudioMaster Pro turns this up way too much. So I always back this off and give it something like this. From the thoughts in my mind, now, one of the cool things about AudioMaster Pro, and again, ignore these dials. These are just there to look cool. All the stuff is behind the scenes, right? So what this has that's cool is this compare button. See how if I hold down this compare button, it drops the volume and it removes all the processing. So you can very quickly A/B your master. So if we play, and then I'll show you what happens when we hold down this compare button. Muttering time, muttering time, so I don't end up taking a... Cool, right? And you can tell there that, yeah, their original one up here is like way too much. It's too full on. In my view, it's too much anyway. So I'll bring that down a little bit there. Now, again, you can experiment with all these different ones. Now, this is cool because AudioMaster Pro is not just for your music, but if you do podcasting, if you do video, you can actually throw anything at this. Any audio that you want to master, you can throw at this and it will do a pretty good job because as you would have seen there, there's hip hop, there's country, but there's also things like, if I can find it, there's voiceover. So if you've got a voiceover that you want to actually master, you can use that. Podcaster there, and you've even got a custom EQ one. So if you want to dial in your own EQ and then have it mastered using that, you can actually do that as well. Let's go back to something like folk, because this is a bit of a folksy song. Now, as we showed before, you've got 1, 2, and 3. So let's just go through these. I'll tap through each one of these, and then you'll be able to see or hear the difference each of these make. So to me, the folk setting is kind of bringing out a bit too much top end. So why don't we actually go and try a rock or country maybe even. Country might be interesting. So if we try country. Turn to me, till then I won't stray, for I can trust. I kind of like that subtle country vibe. So let's try it. Let's just see what it does and see how it sounds. So we can do the same sort of thing here. We're going to export by tapping in the top right corner. We want to export it as a WAV file. Of course we do. It's going to prepare the export, and then we've got a bunch of options. We can just share it, open with iCloud Drive or iTunes sharing. I always do open with because, again, I use Audio Share as my central point for all my audio. Just for doing things like this, it's just cool. And again, I know it costs you, what, $4, I think, Audio Share. Very much worth the investment. So we'll tap on Audio Share. And it's going to bring our master. Okay, so you know how I said before, I wanted to show you an example of where you crush it? Yeah, and this was me turning down and using the gentle preset on AudioMaster Pro. So, fair warning, if you do go for AudioMaster Pro, you need to use it pretty gently. Because even when I turned it down and used the gentle setting, it gave me this. Now, it's not necessarily going to sound bad if we play it. Again, let's come to our big block of sound here. And look, you can see that's getting to your sausage phase, right? It's really not giving you much dynamic range. So let's play here. Muttering time, so I don't end up taking. Now, it's subtle, but you might be hearing the very smallest amount of pumping and the very smallest amount of crispy distortion. The sort of distortion you get with mastering can be hard to actually hear. And if you're listening through the YouTube compression or the Facebook compression, you may not even be hearing it at all. But I can hear it, and it's just a very crisp top-end kind of crackle. And if you're hearing that kind of crackle, you've gone too far. So that's something to listen out for. What we do is we go back. Congratulations, you've done it. We'd come back here to AudioMaster Pro, and I would start turning this down. And just to show you what that will do, let's just turn it down here and play. Okay, so this is with the volume significantly down, and let's just re-export it just so that I can quickly show you the difference here. So we'll re-export it, and you can see here it's pretty quick. The rendering engines on all of these are pretty quick. Clevegrants is probably there you go. Clevegrants is probably the slowest, but AudioMaster Pro and Final Touch are pretty darn quick. So there you go. That is our master. And again, if we go to that same section, you can see here that we don't quite have the sausage going on. Yes, it's still hitting up to 0 dB, which you want. You want it to be up near that top end so that it's going to be competitive with other songs that you listen to. But if we listen back now. Muttering time, so I don't. You're not hearing that very subtle pumping, and you're not hearing that crispy crackle at the top end. So listen for the crispy crackle. Unlike your Cocoa Pops or your Rice Bubbles, or what do you call them in America, Cocoa Puffs, you don't want the snap, crackle, and pop. If you get snap, crackle, and pop, you've gone too far with your mastering. Yeah, exactly. And Tom has a really good point. To a point, you've got to use your ears. That sounds pretty good despite the waveform. Exactly. Don't get hung up on this stuff. I've had waveforms that end up looking like that are right for the song, yeah, because it's a very soft and subtle song, and you don't want it peaking all the time. And I've had final mixes that look like that, or final masters, and they're absolutely fine. Especially if it's a heavy metal or a rock song, then there you go. Rice Krispies, there you go. Rice Krispies is what you call them in the US. Do they still have Snap, Crackle, and Pop? The little characters that run around in your cereal bowl? They used to scare me. Anyway. There you go. Rice Krispies are bad for your body and for your music, says Amarcia. Probably high in sugar and salt and weird stuff that you wouldn't think, and fat even. I don't know how they get all these things into cereal. Anyway, don't eat cereal. Eat muesli. Hello to you, Chand. We're going to finish off. Gary taking a strong position on cereal. You didn't think you'd get cereal as well as mastering information here, did you? All right, let's go with our final one because we've got about 20 minutes and I want to give you a quick demo of this and have enough time for some Q&A at the end in case anyone has any questions. So we'll go back to our list and to our apps here. So the last thing I want to show you, now this, full disclosure, this is my favorite mastering platform, and this actually was the #1 paid app in my recent top 10 countdown. So you know that I love it. So I'm going to get a little bit gooey about this, but it is Final Touch, and it is great at giving the final touch to your songs. So we're going to tap this. Again, we're going to do the share thing, and again, we're going to go across and make sure that we keep more. and find Final Touch. Now you can add the ones you use often as a favorite if you want to, by the way. So if I'm using Final Touch all the time, I can actually hit edit and hit the plus button here. In fact, I should do this because it's then going to add it up the top here. So in the first screen that you just saw there, it'll have Final Touch now. So we'll tap Final Touch. Here it is, Positive Grids Final Touch. It is loaded in my track and it has put some very basic presets on here. It's put some pre-EQ with just a little roll off of the bottom end there. It's put some dynamics here that are basically doing nothing, that are sitting in the middle waiting for me to play around with them. And it's put a maximizer here, which is your limiter at the end. So what I tend to do is I work backwards most of the time with Final Touch. And you can see here with Final Touch, you can just add and remove components. So you've got your 6 different components here, and you can add and remove them by just dragging them up and dragging them down. Now I did mention iPad versus iPhone. Everything we've shown so far can be used on iPad or iPhone. But the reason that the title of this video is mastering on iPad is that my favorite app, this one, is only on iPad. And as you start using it, you'll realize why. Because if you were trying to dial in things like your multi-band compression dynamics here on an iPhone, it's going to be really tricky, right? It's not going to be easy to do. So and I've asked Positive Grid and said, are you ever going to make an iPhone version? I don't think they even answered me, but so which says all that you needed to know. So what we can do here, we've got presets. Yes, of course we do. Everything has presets and this is no exception. So to start with, you can start with a preset. So if we tap down in the bottom right here, you've got presets here for all sorts of different things, but the ones you generally want to start with are your genre-based. So we'll find a genre-based one here. What best represents this genre? Is probably something like, it's almost country rock that we'd be going with, or just country basic. It's not a country song, but that's kind of the sort of processing I want with it. Let's go country pop, why not? Just to show what this does. So country pop, so here it's added an EQ, and you can see here it's given us a roll off there at the bottom end. It's then come here, it's given us a little boost there, and then it's given us another little boost there. And you can see that your 0 dB is this line through the middle here. It's a little bit hard to get used to when you're first starting. So it's going to roll off there. It's given us a boost there, which is at, what's that? That's around 600 hertz. And then it's given us a little bit of air up here around 7 kilohertz. In the dynamics here, it's done virtually nothing. So we don't have anything, it's not done any multi-band compression. The stereo imaging is on here, so it's added a little bit of stereo width by the looks of it. And then we've got our maximizer here that it's pulled down our threshold. So if we play this, again, we'll go to the middle of the track and we'll hit play. To save myself and others from the thoughts in my Turn it off. Mind, I'm back on. And the cool thing here is that you've always got this meter here on the right. So this is really cool because what we can do is if we want to give ourselves a little bit of headroom, which we probably do, like we did at the start in GarageBand, we can just drag this meter down to give us a little bit of space. And then we can actually use the maximizer, which is our limiter, to actually bring it back up. So this can just mean that we get a smoother top end to our song because we're not pushing it. It's not already right up at 0 dB and we're pushing everything to 0 dB. So let's just try this. We'll turn that down and you can watch the meters here because this is your original and then this is your output. So this is what's coming in and this is what's coming out. So this is the one that should be coming and tapping on the ceiling, hitting that brick wall at the top and hitting around that 0 dB. So don't fear anything around the yellow, especially when you're limiting, but anything red you should definitely avoid. So let's play this again now. So yeah, even just out of the box with that very subtle, we're not really doing much here. It's just a little bit of EQ changes, then you're hearing a difference. And again, you can preview not just that, but say we wanted to just make sure that this EQ is actually doing something good, you can leave the maximizer and the imager on and just turn off the EQ and back on. So let's listen to this. We'll play it with the EQ on and then we'll turn it off. And of course, you can play around with this. If you don't want quite as much, you can drop it down. You can change the frequency at which you're actually doing it. And you've just got all the options here. You can then come in here and if you wanted to, say, give it a little bit less on the bass side or more, you can actually do that. And I'll show you this one because the multi-band compressor actually shows you how much it's compressing in there, which is kind of cool. Let's play with this. Time. time to save myself and others from the thoughts in my mind. I'm murdering time, so I don't end up taking a life. So can you hear there that as I'm moving these, different to an EQ, with a multiband compressor, it's really compressing those sounds. So if you're finding, if you're doing drum and bass and you really want that kick drum to cut through, instead of just grabbing the EQ and turning it up at the bottom end, you can use your multiband compressor to actually increase the level of your bass. So that's kind of a cool thing. And you've got the bands here. Look, I explain multiband compression in a lot more detail in the video. There's an 8-part series. Part 1 is linked down in the description, but I've done a full 8-part series showing you how to import, how to use all 6 of these modules, and then how to export. So, and I do 3 different complete songs. So if you want to learn how to use Grand Finale, if you want to learn how to use Final Touch, check out those videos. You will be able to find what you need to do. Now, we've kind of played around with this and broken it a bit. So let's just go back to a preset and go with a genre-based. Is there like a folk genre? Not really. We'll go to country rock, because this one kind of brings, this one gives it a little bit more oomph. So we've got country rock on here now. We'll play. And again, the main things that we're looking at are to make sure that we've got enough limiting, because this one is what you can really use. And this is where you can go nuts again. So if we go to our loud part and we hit play. There's that crunchy. The snap, crackle, and pop we were talking about, this is a great demonstration of this. So if you overdo it with this threshold setting, which is this is the same as that gain dial we did in GarageBand right at the start. So listen for the snap, crackle, and pop at the top, because as we bring this down, you'll hear when we hit the point where it goes too far. See if you can identify it. And the reason I'm showing you that in detail is that that's one of the things I hear. When someone starts out with mastering, they almost always, and I did it, I'm not saying you're bad, I did this too, you almost always go too far. You go too much down on the threshold, you try and boost it too much, and you end up getting that crackle. And even if you don't hear it at the start because it's so subtle, other people will, and that can be bad. Which takes me kind of to my final point here, which is that it's a good idea to learn from other folks when it comes to mastering. So listen to other people's music, listen to great songs that you love, and listen to how they're actually mastered. That can really help you with your mastering as well. And I highly recommend an online community, something like the Create, Record, Release group that I have over on Facebook. That's the official Facebook group of Studio Live Today. We've got 600 plus members there. If you're starting to get into mastering and you're sharing your masters, people will be able to come in and critique them and let you know. And even if your ears can't hear some snap, crackle, and pop, or some pumping, or something sounding bad, other people may, and they may be able to help you out. Just put it out there and say, hey, here's my final master. It's my first time. I've just trying Grand Finale or Final Touch for the first time. What does this sound like? Does this sound radio ready? And then people can say, yeah, it's actually really cool. Or it's a bit too hot in this section. That minute 1, it sounded a bit too hot. Or actually, I played this and then I played another track, and you could probably go a little bit harder with it. You could probably push it a little bit more. All right, we'll finish off this. If you've got questions, get them ready. If you put question in front of it in the chat, that'll help me out, because we've got 10 minutes left to answer some questions. If you have any questions about mastering, about iOS processing, music creation, whatever it is, we can answer that. But let's export this one here. So we're going to hit the export button here in Final Touch. We are going to once again go to Audio Share. Now with Final Touch, it actually kind of integrates beautifully with Audio Share. You don't need Audio Share with Final Touch, but you should get Audio Share with Final Touch, because it just makes your importing and exporting a heck of a lot easier. All right, so we want 44.1 24-bit wave, and we're going to export, and it's going to do our same thing. So yeah, processing pretty quick. Boom, boom, renders it down nice and fast, imports it, and it's done. So there it is. Now, actually, I reckon I had a setting in there. I didn't have my setting to 0 dB. You can see how it's given it a little bit of a buzz cuddle on the top there? If we compare that to some of our other masters that go right to the top, oh, okay, maybe not. Maybe it just looked a bit different. No, it's fine. But yeah, so again, fairly similar sort of master to what we've had before, and around about the right point. Probably a little bit too hot, because if we come in here, we've got a few sausages. But if we hit play, I'm muttering time, so I don't. Right, sounding good. So yeah, there you go. We've got a bunch of different options here for our mastering. And yeah, look, you don't need to buy all of these. You don't need to go out and get Grand Finale and Final Touch. Find the one that you think suits you. And basically it works like this. It's kind of small, medium, and large when it comes to effort. If you just want to throw your track, like when we did the one here in AudioMaster Pro, it still sounds great, right? But you don't need to have all of the additional knowledge. You don't need to worry yourself about all the different dials and knobs. You just go, I want this type and I want it about this loud, and then it processes it for you. So that's a good option. If you want the sort of medium one, I would go with Grand Finale. This gives you that next level. You can still use a bunch of the cool presets, but it does give you that next level of control. And then if you want the complete control, then Final Touch is definitely for you if you want to dive into the weeds, but it is a bit more expensive. That $19.99 US at the moment for Final Touch as well. And of course, there is nothing wrong, especially when you're starting out, there is absolutely nothing wrong with going with something that is 100% free. And that's why right at the front, I showed you the GarageBand method. Because if you've already got a great mix and you just want to make it radio ready and add a little limiting, GarageBand iOS can do it for you and is a good option. Alrighty, we'll jump over and see. Kellogg's thanks you. Yeah, right. I've talked so much about Snap, Crackle, and Pop that yeah, they do love it. Country rock. There you go. We know Guzzo loves him some country rock. We'll come over to here. Ed B says we'll have to check them out. Yeah, it's worth checking them out. And again, check the description. There's a bunch of other videos. So each of these 4 methods, I have the download for the app, and I have a video that's more of a complete tutorial of each of these. There you go. Annie G, who's also a country fan. Yeah, you can see me wrestling with it. I'm like, I don't want to make it. It's not a country song, but it kind of is. Come on. Exactly. Come on. It's country and you know it. Exactly. Dark, depressing subject matter and acoustic finger picking guitar, right? It's country. It's country all the way. Yeah, and Brian's just agreeing with what Tom said before. In the end, if you have good ears as an engineer, it makes a huge difference no matter what the tool is. Absolutely. No matter what the tool is, even if it's this tool right here, then it is all about listening. So you might have noticed a couple of times there I closed my eyes and listened. So yeah, the temptation is to look at the meters and look at the dials and look at what it looks like. Listen to what it sounds like. Use the 2 ears that you have here, because other people aren't going to be looking at the dials. They don't know what compression settings you use. They don't know how much limiting you applied. They're just listening into it and saying, does this slap or does this not slap? And you want it to slap, yeah? So, yeah, good points there. We'll come on down and see if we have any other ones. Yeah, and as Amaracia says, it is mind-blowing that we can do all this on a device that 10 years ago was amazing. It could open Safari. Yeah, it was the very first iPhone, couldn't copy and paste and didn't have an app store. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm blinding you. Blinded by the light. Didn't have an app store, couldn't copy and paste. It's kind of ridiculous now. Can't turn my light off. Kind of ridiculous now that we have this level of flexibility and this level of amazing audio production. And to be honest, without going on a giant rant here, I think this is the reason why a lot of folks look down their nose at iOS music production. They don't realize that this is here. They don't think that you have professional audio mastering tools on your iOS device, but you absolutely do. And you can create really cool sounding music and sounds by doing that. Yep, there is the Final Touch playlist. Jade has linked to it here in the chat, and it is as well linked down in the description below that you can check it. The anti-clipper. Yeah, you don't want to clip. Clipping bad. Clipping bring pain. Coming up in 10 minutes, actually 5 minutes now, Jade Starr's going to be interviewing Panaki Deb, an excellent music producer, and I'm sure they'll talk about recording and mixing and mastering and all those good things. So if you haven't checked out one of Jade's interviews, you want to get yourself over there real fast. Thank you, Chand. I think you're amazing too. For watching me, you are equally, if not more amazing. No, you're much more amazing, let's be honest. No, thank you. Stump to stump bowling today. Gary Hubb's coming with the cricket references. Yeah, got to go and get ready to watch the cricket today. We've got some questions coming in that we'll answer in the last 5. Will DistroKid reject my song if it is sausage-like? I think I overdid it and had to bring it back before they accepted it. I haven't ever had it, but then again, I've never really crushed a master. I'm pretty cautious when I get to that final release stage of what I do. I have heard things where people would, if you're getting to the point where it's distorting or it may be some like really loud bits at the top end, then maybe. There's a really good site called loudnesspenalty.com. I've done a video on it. If you search my name, Pete John's Loudness Penalty, I demo it, but go to loudnesspenalty.com with your final master and upload it there. And if you're seeing that it's going to be turned down a bunch, you'll want to reduce it. You want to pull it back a little bit anyway. So, yeah, not sure if that's exactly the reason. You'd have to double check with DistroKid, but it may be a contributing factor. Question, would you know how to invert phase reverse polarity on GarageBand Mac? I've tried with a game plugin, but can't work my way around it. Now, in Reaper, which I used to use, there was just a button that you could switch the polarity. You could do the phase inversion. And I thought there was a plugin. I thought there was an AU plugin for Mac that does it. I'll have to open that up to the crowd here. If anyone knows the answer to this, if you can drop a comment or drop a chat response here now, I'm sure it can be done because it's a pretty simple thing to do. And I thought that there was a plugin, maybe not a default plugin, but I'm pretty sure there was an AU plugin. But yeah, I could be wrong. Final Touch is easy to use. I could do with a few more. Yeah, it does have a limited number of genres. Maybe I should. Oh, there you go. Maybe I should do some genre-based Final Touch plugins. That would be a cool value add to throw out there, right? Absolutely. Some tips for mastering classical music project. Less is more. Classical music, singer-songwriter, quieter kind of songs, less is more. You usually want to do very minimal stuff because you've probably already mixed it and EQ'd it. You probably just want to add a limiter to just bring those peaks up and maybe just pull everything up a little tiny bit just so that those nice subtle violin parts can be heard. You may also want to use some multi-band compression, especially in the top end, to just make sure you got some clarity because you tend to have a little more on the treble side in classical music. Let's see if we've got any final things. Well, to this one from Barry Smith. What's the difference between AudioMaster versus AudioMaster Pro, free app versus pay app? Yeah, so AudioMaster you can use for free, but to actually export and have full functionality, you need to pay a subscription, which I think is about $3 a month. But for $15, you buy it outright. So if you're going to use it a couple of times, maybe go AudioMaster and do the subscription. If you're going to use it for more than like 3 or 4 songs over more than a 6-month period, it makes sense to just buy it, in my view. And after Jade, there you go, Jerry Helpish. Joey Helpish has his show as well. Question from Silk, is there a way to crossfade in GarageBand Mac like you can do with Logic? I don't know. I'm still learning GarageBand Mac. Mate, I would jump over to the GarageBand users Facebook group and ask that. Absolutely. Dan Egbert, can I get a raw power sound without pumping? Yeah, it just takes a little bit of trial and error. It takes a little bit of time to get that balance. You would have seen me, I was very carefully maneuvering those things. It's about balancing your input gain and your limiter and making sure that you're getting that. If you want the sausage, go the sausage, but make sure it's a delicious sausage, a nice clean sausage, not a sausage that has a bunch of Rice Krispies in it. I think on that weird note, it is time to finish. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And if you did get value from this one, throw the thumbs up there. If you're new to the channel, we're here every day. We've got something new for you every day about the world of mobile and home studio music recording, production, mixing, mastering, and all the rest. So, yeah, I hope to see you again real soon. Jump over to Jade's channel now to check out her interview and then to Joey's channel for those live shows. I'll see you over the weekend. Got a big episode of Your Music Live happening tomorrow. And then we've got, of course, Home Studio Q&A, GarageBand Weekly, and the Happy Hour. Another big weekend of live content here on Studio Live today. As I say at the end of every show, please be kind to yourselves. Now more than ever, be kind to yourselves. Be kind to others and keep creating. Rock on, folks. I'll see you soon.